second. Um, let's see. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sorry, Karen. I'm just connecting a couple things here to make sure it shows up where I want it to show up. Let's see. Let's see here. So it's a pleasure being with you, all of you, on Sunday nights. Like I said, we're here every Sundays, 6 to 7 p.m. live. And we're going to be interviewing Karen, who is somebody that is, I've only actually recently gotten to know, as a matter of fact. And it's kind of fun to, she's kind of, Karen, how do you describe yourself again?
So I'm an emotional intelligence leadership coach.
Emotional intelligence. Here's my. If you could say it, then you're on the path, right?
Right,
I'm just
exactly.
teasing you. It takes a certain amount of intelligence. Leadership coach. I like that idea. Um, let's see. Success principles. Okay. All right. Hold on one second here. Okay. So everything's up and running and strong, and that's good. So we should be connecting to Facebook in just within about 10 seconds. Okay, great. We are now live on Facebook too. So, my friends, again, this is Robert Sidell once again on the Gateway Show, live every Sunday night, broadcast on the number one talk station in Las Vegas. We're also simulcasting on Facebook. Plus, we also, when the show is over, we'll put it on YouTube so you can listen to this show later on as well. And it's going to be fun. We're going to be interviewing Karen Olson Hall, who's an emotional intelligence leadership coach, which is, if you could pronounce it, that's the first step in the process. But it's it's going to be fun because that's how we all learn, my friends. I think all of us want to learn, right? We all want to try to make our lives better and happier and more fulfilling on this earth. We don't want to waste our opportunities, and we want to make the most of the choices that are presented to us. So that's what this show is all about. If you happen to be tuning into the radio right now, or if you happen to be listening to a recording of this later on YouTube, I want you to know we embrace you. We send you love and grace and healing, and just trust that at this very moment in time, this is the divine and perfect time for you to be listening to this show. And it's also the time for us to join together and kind of lift each other up. And Karen, that's one of my ideas that I've been working on a lot for a long, long time. I truly believe that we human beings, if we could learn to lift each other up in love, which is easy, very, very easy words to say, I understand, but I think we could discover that life could become really a very, very, very happy journey. And I think it's just one of those things that we have to be open to that idea that's even a possibility that, what if we discover we are endowed with the ability to send love to one another, heart to heart? Hey, Janet, nice to see you on there. Um, yeah, what if we? Janet is a good example. She's one of the people that comes on later in the show. Janet and I met doing spiritual work. Listen to this. I'll just say over 35 years ago. And as a matter of
Wow.
fact, she did something very nice. She actually came in and sort of helped take care of my dad the last 3 years of his life, and so did something totally different than what she was not her normal career or anything. But she did that because she was friends of ours, and we were able to set that up for her to make it work for her. But it so you know what? For all of you listening right now, or be listening in later on also, the friendships we develop are what determine the destiny and trajectory of our lives. And I've really come to realize that so deeply. I would be nothing without, well, the loving support of my wife, my family, with some of my dear friends, people that I met. It's funny, Karen, you'll find this interesting. I worked at a big law firm that represented, hey, Jonelle, nice to see you on there. By the way, Karen, Jonelle, somebody comes on almost every weekend. She works at the Westgate Casino where Barry Manilow comes and performs every month or so. And
Wow.
here's a guy he's not giving up. I mean, I was talking to him about Janelle about that last week. I think she told me he was even older than I thought he was. He's like 82 or something, soon to be 83. But I don't know what he's done with, but somehow he still looks good. And they've set up the stage in a way that it all works, and he has a dynamic show. And I think that's their number one show at that hotel. Believe it or not, here's a guy in his 80s, and he jokingly says, "I'm about 100 years old now," but it's fun to have him participate there. Jonelle, don't you think that I'm just listening on Facebook. Don't you think most of the people seem to have a good time? I mean, my wife and I have seen him about 3 times now there, maybe even 4. And that's one of the things we're going to do again because it's fun to see him, and you see all these people there, and he sings all these familiar songs, and that's a lot of fun too. And
That is fun.
Yeah, she just said, Jonelle said, oh, yeah, that's right. Um, you know what? You don't. So I was going to start to say, when I worked at that big firm representing President Ronald Reagan out of law school, I ended up making a good friend there. And he's been a lifetime friend now. It's literally 47 years now. And he actually works with me. He's an attorney and he lives up in Idaho, but he's connected to my office. So we talk pretty much every single day. This is going on now for 48 years, 47 years. And he has literally done some wonderful things that for us as an office and for me in my life that have allowed my life to turn out a lot better. And I was thinking, how does that happen? You meet somebody, you go to work somewhere, suddenly you have a friend that's in your whole life for the rest of your life. Pretty
Yeah, I
amazing,
just feel
isn't it?
like they're so divine when you have a friend like that. I feel like God orchestrates things and helps us to cross paths and then blesses us. I have some friends like that, and it to me it is such a gift from God, and I tell them that because I am so grateful.
Well, it's funny. I also have some friends that I've known literally since kindergarten, and I we try to get together about once a year, if not more sometimes. But we go up to a mountain cabin and kind of talk about our lives and where we're at, and because it's funny, we were going to the same cabin when we were in our teens, and what are we going to do with our lives now? We're I'm in my early 70s, and so now we're looking at what we have done. But the thing for me, kind of like Barry Manilow, I'm kind of glad I brought that up right now. Listen, some of his biggest outreach has been in the last 10 years or so. I'm guessing. Of course, he was very popular before too, but he's certainly still staying very successful and popular. And
Right.
so, and he's like 13 years older than I am or something. So, it's you never know. Or I got a chance to hear Bob Proctor at one of his seminars. Have you ever gone to one of his seminars?
Not in person, but yes, I have heard him.
I went and saw him down at Sheridan Gateway, or one of those hotels down there, about 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was probably right before the COVID thing, and I really got a lot out of it. And he was like 85 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might have even been 86. And he was talking about how his life, he met this woman, a woman that came to a seminar, and she came and talked to us too. And somehow they connected deeply, and she had all these visions and everything for his seminar, where they could take it. And now, in those last 15 years of his life, roughly, became more successful than his whole prior life. Isn't that
Wow,
amazing?
that is really amazing. I mean, it kind of reminds me of, Moses. I mean, he was so much older when things finally started to happen for him. And he probably just thought, when is this ever going to happen? And so many people wonder, when are they going to be able to accomplish things? And then later in life, they reinvent themselves and all of a sudden these things happen. Sometimes promises that God has made to us aren't fulfilled until quite a bit later, and sometimes it takes a lot of patience to wait. But I think it's a beautiful thing when we can look back on our life and connect those dots and see how God's hand has been involved in orchestrating things in our lives.
Well, that's what I'm working on, and I'm always focusing on that idea. Obviously, I have dreams of, not, fortunately, and I'm going to say by God's grace, but I've been a practicing attorney now, like I say, for 48 years, which is a long time, really. And
Yeah.
ironically, some of my successful years have been the last 5 or 10 years. Again, so it's sort of the same phenomena. But but I also have been an ordained minister for over 40 years, and I'm very non-denominational. I try to embrace people wherever they're at in their journey. But my dream is that it always has been since I've been very young. Is there's a way we can awaken love in this world that could change the whole world. But at the same time, I'm more surrendered to God than I've ever been because, first off, when I pray to God, I say the truth is whatever I might be able to do or not be able to do, or with other people, whatever, um, it wouldn't be any good if it wasn't for God's grace. You know,
Exactly.
you wouldn't really want anything. There's a lot of stories in the world of things that have gone very far south and bad when people forgot about things centered in God. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? There's just a lot of famous leaders that have gone into things that have caused a lot of tragedy and difficulty. So I'm very very clear that unless something is God's will and His intention, I don't want it in my life. And so I'm just surrendering. So that takes a little bit of the burden off of me, which I think is actually the right idea, because if it's really God's purpose, then God's the one that's going to open the doors. By the way, I can't remember if I gave you one of these cards or not when you were there. Did I give you one of those?
Yes, you did.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
and I loved
good.
it because I start my day wondering what miracle I'm going to see today.
My friends, those are friends that are listening on the radio. Actually, we may have to go to a break in just about a minute. But I want to share something with you. It's kind of fun. And I'll tell you about this too, Karen. There's a lady that I met through my work, and she came in one day. We all want to be open to the most miraculous stuff every day, right? We know that part. But she has an idea. It was kind of a fun little idea. So in the mornings, she has a prayer to God, and she starts thanking God for all the good things that have already happened in that day. In other words, in the morning, she's talking to God as if it's like 9 o'clock at night. So she starts going, well, I'm so grateful to you, God. I met Karen, and I met this other new person, and you brought me these other good things, and all these great things happen. She does all this in the morning before she ever leaves the house. And
Yeah.
and I was just experimenting with it, doing that a little bit myself last week. And instead of just saying, God, what can I do today? But just sort of already accepting that it's already done. And
Mhm.
it really is nice. I mean, I remember doing that, like I said, last week, and all these different things happened that were just wonderful that I wouldn't have expected. So, I think we can never limit ourselves. We just got to be open all the time to unexpected blessings, new friends showing up, new possibilities. Oh, I got to go to a break. Hold on, but I'll keep talking to you on Facebook. For my friends, this is Robert Sidell. It's the Gateway Show. I'm interviewing Karen Olson on the line, and or Karen Hall. I guess you mostly go by Karen Hall, don't you?
Yeah, Olson's my middle name.
Oh, okay, so Karen Hall, but we'll start getting into more details with her. But stay tuned, my friends. I'll be back in just a moment. We're going to come up with some success principles that could change all of our lives. Stay tuned. This is Robert Sidell. So, and I'm always every time I do this show. Of course, it's kind of it's an interesting phenomenon because I'm very sensitive to vibrations. Let's call it that. That's the easiest way I can put it. So when I do this show, I'm always feeling currents of flow and energy, and based on the people listening and things like that. And I always know there's a healing process going on, and so that's something I've been doing this show one way or another for over 20 years. Can you believe that? 20 years. I've been on the radio basically pretty much. It's probably a little more than 20 years, but I'll just say 20 years. And so it's like one way or another, a lot of people have heard this show, even if they only listen occasionally or they might listen all the time. And then now that it's on Facebook, a lot of people see it. It always surprises me, even like when I came to the mastermind group, people start coming up to me and saying, well, I love what you do on Facebook. I never even knew they were listening on Facebook. But they'll start saying, when we see your stuff, we always appreciate it. Oh, my friend Ernie, hey, Ernie, nice to see you there. Ernie's a good example of a friend I met that I wasn't expecting. I went into a networking group one day about 10 years ago, actually about 11 years ago now. And somehow he and I started talking. And anyway, we've been friends ever since then. And so he and I have been doing, he started out in India, but he's now been in the United States most of his life. And he does some beautiful prayers. And every at the end of every show, he shares a prayer with us that's very illuminating and enlightening and very, very wonderful to listen to. So he's been a friend I wouldn't have been expecting. So I think we got to be open. That's part of, if we want miraculous things in our lives, we got to cultivate our mind for miracles. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's so funny. I just told you, I just flew back from California, and it was funny because I was wearing one of my kind of colorful jackets that I sometimes wear. Hold on, maybe I'll put it on here in a second. But anyway, this flight attendant started talking about, oh, look at that jacket, wow. And then there's a guy sitting next to me, and he really liked the jacket. Um, yes, Ernie wants to know. Yeah, her information's on Facebook, Ernie, too. She's tagged on Facebook. He wants to know because he always puts a post on this later on, too. But it's fun because this guy gave me his card, and he's kind of into the same thing, and he was just moving to Las Vegas. So I'll be kind of curious to see if there's some connection that will happen there. It's kind of fun.
That is really fun. I just shared it to my Facebook. I had written a post, but now that you're live, I just shared the live.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Um, I'm just listening to the music. I'm listening in the background to it, so I'll know when I'm back on the radio. So we have a little bit more time. Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking out at a pretty setting now, looking out over the mountains. Every place is beautiful. I was just down by the ocean. That's one whole mood. Oh, we're going back on the radio. Good evening, my friends. This is Robert Sidell. I welcome you back to the Gateway Show on every Sunday night, 6 to 7 p.m. live. It's a great pleasure to be with you here, expecting miracles, being open to miracles, sharing miracles for all of us. And tonight, I'm having fun interviewing Karen Hall on the phone, and on the phone on Facebook, and also on Zoom, and we'll be putting it on YouTube later on. And she's going to share some different ideas with us about all sorts of things. And but I just want you to know, everybody listening, who happens to be listening right now, or now or in the future, we're praying that good things happen to you, blessings happen to you, wholeness and healing happens to you, new beginnings happen, release of your past happens, that just this moment becomes that place where you could become healed in mind, spirit, and body. And this moment in time is the launching of a new beginning. And that's true for you, Karen. It's true for me, or anybody else who's listening, or if they happen to be listening to the recording later on. So Karen, tell me a little bit about some of your different ideas of what you do and what your contribution is. By the way, you have a nice smile. Look, you're coming across well on on the visual there.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Robert. I'm glad to be on your Gateway Show, and I'm so excited to celebrate our love of God and our love of spirituality, because Robert has a card that says expect a miracle. And I was telling him that I start my day wondering, and in my prayer, my meditation, you might call it, but in my prayer, I wonder what miracle I'm going to see today. And especially when I am going through challenging times, that little bit of hope for my day helps me to change my mindset. And so, being an emotional intelligence leadership coach, I am helping people learn about mindset, about resilience. And one of the things that helps so much with resilience is being able to reframe things. And when we have a spiritual perspective, it helps so much to change our ability to about the way that we think and about the way that we feel. And so that changes how we respond within our own body. Even just hearing the thought, like we say a blessing on the food before we eat it, that is thanking God in advance before we actually eat the food. And he wants us to do the same thing with blessings. He wants us to thank him before the blessings come, because it's an act of faith, and it's also an act of hope. And it's a belief that he is a rewarder of good things, that he is going to send blessings in our life. And when we believe that that's true, when we hope that that is true, that calms our nervous system. And even when we're going through something very stressful, just that thought alone can calm our physical body and our nervous system. So I think that's very interesting, how hope is very powerful, and faith is crucial for us to have hope.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, you just reminded me of one of my favorite scriptures in I think it's Hebrews 11:1. But and it's not like I know all these different scriptures by memory, but a few of them I've memorized just because I happen to like them. And in that Hebrews 11:1, it says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen."
Yes, I love that scripture too. And the other scripture in Hebrews, where it talks about how the Savior is our high priest of good things to come, that he is sending good things, and good things are
Hmm.
coming. So we know that that's true because of our Savior being our advocate.
So let me ask you something. Okay, so how did you um, well, how did you get on the spiritual journey? How long have you been on it? How did tell me a little bit about your history.
So my spiritual journey started a long time ago. When I was born, I was 2.5 months premature, and they put me in an incubator. They told my mom and dad that I wouldn't survive, and my mom and dad were terrified. I weighed 1 pound 13 ounces shortly after birth, and so that's about the size of a grapefruit.
That's hard
And
to believe. That's one of the lightest. I think I've that's unbelievable. That's really light.
it's it's very, especially in those days, they didn't have all the modern equipment and things that they do now. And so then they whisked me away. My mom couldn't hold me. She couldn't touch me. She couldn't feed me, nurse me, anything. And we know now that if babies are deprived of physical touch, that they die. But miraculously, I made it through the night. And then the doctor said, wow, she's a fighter. She looks like she might survive, but she's going to be a vegetable. And
That's weird. I never. Yeah, this is the first I've heard of that. But go ahead.
yeah, and they said that I would be retarded, I would be blind, I would not be able to do anything. And miraculously, by the grace of God, I defied the odds of death, and I'm here today, and I am a walking miracle. And so miracles have formed my life since the very beginning. And I was a very
Hmm.
spiritual child. I remember asking my mom a lot of questions about God, and she would say, "Where are you getting this?" Now you may think, well, that's kind of normal, right? Children ask about God, but I wasn't taught about God. My dad was an atheist. My mom was an agnostic. So she couldn't figure out where, at 2 and 3 years old, I was asking her questions about God. And she's just like, this is really weird. And the other thing that was very unusual was somehow I learned to pray. I don't know how I learned to pray, but I think that I've often thought about those years or those months that I was all alone in the incubator. And I've pondered this spirituality that accompanied me all throughout my whole life, ever since I've been a child. And I remember pondering that, like, how did I learn to pray? And I remember reading the scriptures, and I was kind of a worrywart. I had a lot of anxiety, probably because I was left alone for all that time. And so the world didn't feel like a very safe place. And so I prayed all the time. I was always asking God to help me with this scary thing. And I remember when I was about 9 years old and I was trying to decide what to wear to school. I couldn't decide between this outfit and that outfit. And I didn't get an answer. And I was like listening, and I didn't get an answer. And I thought, well, I'll just go to the Bible. And I don't even know how I had a Bible, but somebody had given me a Bible. And I thought, I'll just close my eyes and stick my finger in there and get an answer, because I'm not hearing an answer, I'm not feeling an answer. So I'm just going to go look in the Bible. And so I stuck my finger in, I opened my eyes and I looked down at the verse, and it said, why do you worry about what to wear? Why do you worry? You don't need to worry about what to eat. I clothe the birds of the air. I clothe the lilies of the field. You have no need to worry about what to wear. And I was just like, oh my word! It was like this bolt from heaven.
That's
Like,
fun.
he knew exactly the worries of my little girl heart. And I knew that he was aware of me. And it was such a powerful moment for me, because he let me know I didn't need to worry. I could trust in him, and he would take care of me. And he quotes that to me over and over and over again. When I worry about this part of my career, or this thing with, that might happen over here, or any setbacks that I have in life, I'll hear that song come on the radio, or I'll turn to that scripture again, or I'll read an article and
Mhm.
someone quotes it, and I just laugh, because that's been my theme song. And I also remember, and then when I was about 13, and I was learning to do stitchery, and I was going to do a quote from the Bible. So again, I opened the Bible up, just randomly picked one, and it was the verse in Psalms where it says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and he shall direct thy paths. And that again was the same message that has accompanied me throughout my whole life, was just trust God, and he is with you. And the other thing that really hit me was, I've thought a lot about that time when I was alone, and the way that it impacted me, and the anxiety that I have felt in my life, and how I've had to rely on the Lord to help calm my nervous system and help me to be reassured. And one day I was thinking about that time, and then I thought, was I really alone? Because I believe that God held me in his arms. And I believe that the only way that I survived was because he was with me. And he probably had angels around me that strengthened me and gave me that connection to the divine.
Are you
That,
talking about like when you were first born? You're talking about now?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think during that 12 months, I don't think I was alone. I think that he was with me, and that angels were with me to help me, not only to survive, but to create that bond that gave me that spiritual yearning for the rest of my life.
You know, it's interesting hearing you talk about that. I think different people come to God in different ways. Um, Everybody's a very, very different journey. It's funny. I was, like I said, I happened to be at the beach this weekend for a couple of different reasons, and I was talking to a lifeguard, and somehow I can't remember why maybe I gave him one of my expected miracle cards or something, and he says, "Well, he says something like, "Well, I definitely don't believe in that," kind of thing, which is not a very common response. And he was a nice guy, actually. I really like him a lot. But then we started talking a little bit more, and I said, "Well, oh, so you believe in power greater than yourself?" He goes, "No, no, no, I absolutely don't believe in anything like that at all." He goes, and basically he was talking about, some of the negative things he's seen in his life, how it's caused him to really not believe like that. And so I get it. I mean, believe it or not, I totally am compassionate to that. But it was interesting to realize what different destinies people have. And he was very, very logical. I've known other people like that too. And he says, well, there's just no logical way. And he had a whole bunch of reasons to explain why he feels the way he feels. But at the moment, anyway, his mind's kind of locked down. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of locked down. And it's like he's not really open at all. But that could change in a flicker for him,
Exactly.
which I kind of hope it does for him. What exact path and what he chooses is I'm not even. But it'd be nice for him if he knew he didn't have to carry all these burdens on his shoulders. And that's what I mean. It's interesting how we're all so different. My journey was a little bit like yours. I started from a very very young age. Actually, we're up to our next break already. Folks, this is the Gateway Show. I'm interviewing Karen Hall. It's very interesting to hear her talk about her spiritual journey because everybody, in my opinion, everybody has one. And whatever way you choose to live it, I'm here to love and support it. And I think she is too. So stay tuned with us, folks. We'll be back in just a moment after the break, and we'll keep talking to her. Plus, we got we have Janet and Ernie coming up later in the show, too. That'll be great also. So stay tuned. It's Robert Sidell. You know, um, I Karen, I'll tell you what, for me, when I was a year young, I suddenly started becoming very passionate about the Bible. Enough so that I remember once my family was going on vacation, and I said, "Can I just stay home? I want to go to church this weekend. I want to study, work on that. They're doing something with the Bible, and I want to be there." And then they invited me to be on a little TV show, believe it or not, when I was growing up, me and one other kid. It was where we were answering questions about the Bible. Isn't that funny? And so I was very, very young and very interested in all that. And then I kind of, as I entered into my teenage years, well, I guess I'd have to say, what, I'll tell you something funny for it happened to me. It was kind of what I'll call it the Santa Claus phenomena. Um, I started thinking, well, maybe this is all like the Santa Claus story. We're taught all this, but is it really real? And I think I just kind of backed off a lot for a lot of my teenage years. And I didn't flat out reject it, but I wasn't really all that interested in it, just being more of a typical teenager. But then when I was, my late teens, I had some spiritual experiences, but even then, I entered law school, and then I still wasn't really thinking about God too much, to be honest with you. And then I got out of law school, and then I went through what I call a very profound series of awakenings, where pretty much all the normal stuff that I believed about life was suddenly taken away. I mean, it's kind of funny when you've been living in one world. And by the way, that's the same with this lifeguard I was just talking to was like this too. He goes, "Well, I didn't worry about where I was before I was alive. I'm not going to worry about where I am after I'm not here." I said, "I get it 100%. In fact, I said I wrote something out like that myself once. So I totally, totally get it. But then all of a sudden, I started having these experiences where I realized this is absolutely 100% a spiritual kingdom we're in. And it's 100% spiritual. Does that mean I understand it? No. Does that mean I have all the answers? Absolutely not. In fact, the older I get, the more I'm aware of that. But but I'm kind of like you. So once that fire got ignited again, first when I was very, very young, and then in my mid to late 20s, then that fire's been burning pretty brightly ever since then. And I'm still, but I'm still growing and seeking God's will. That's, I guess, the best way I could describe it. I'm still growing and seeking God's will every day. Um,
Absolutely.
but it's fun. So it's fun to talk to you about it. So you're one of those people, a little bit like me, in the sense that it was your calling. Different traditions talk about it, but it's been your spiritual calling during life. Have you pretty much been consistent that way most of your life? Would you say?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've gone through some extremely stressful experiences, and I've prayed for some things for 30 something years, and I got to a point where I was like, that one of the hardest moments I went through was recognizing that it took more faith to have a prayer not answered than it did to have a prayer answered. Because I realized that, just like you were saying, submitting to the
Hold on
will
one
of God.
second. I got to go back on the radio. Then we'll follow up on that because I want to hear you talk about that. My friends, this is Robert Sidell. I'm here with Karen Hall. She's sharing her spiritual journey, kind of a journey of awakening. It started when she was literally 1 pound, weighed 1 pound when she was born, a little bit more than 1 pound, 1 pound, 13 ounces, did you say?
Yes.
You're right. In this era, they're a little bit better at keeping kids alive like that. But in your era, I have no idea how old you are, but the bottom line is they didn't used to be able to do that. And if it was
Right.
50 years ago, you probably wouldn't have lived, or 100 years ago. Let's put it that way. You almost certainly would have died. It's
Right.
interesting. There's a lot of us, and there's so many little stories like that. Yeah, there's so many. You know what? There's so many stories about how we could live or we might not live. I got to tell you something funny in my own life. My father's a doctor, and his brother was a doctor, and they both lived back in Grand Rapids, Michigan, for a while. And my mother ended up having what's called an ectopic pregnancy. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
Yes. Yes.
By the way, do you have children? I forget.
I do. I have four.
4 children. Okay. Well, ectopic pregnancies can literally kill a woman because
Yes.
they can cause a hemorrhage and they can bleed to death. So my mother went into the hospital and they were going to take out her. So basically, ectopic pregnancy is when pregnancy gets formed in the fallopian tube. So, and if it starts growing in that tube, at some point that's not where it's supposed to grow, right? And so it can eventually burst it open, and that's where it can cause a mother to die. So my mother went into the hospital, and they were going to remove that tube. Well, it turns out my uncle was walking by at the same hospital, who was a doctor, a general surgeon, and they said, hey, Richard, your brother's wife's in here. We're about to take out her fallopian tube. He goes, well, hold on a second. Let me come in there and let me check it out. So he came in and he figured out a way to do whatever had to be done, but leave the fallopian tube in there, which is normally essential to get pregnant, right? At least in modern eras. I mean, in that era. But he did warn her. He said, there's a very good chance you'll never get pregnant again, though. But just because it had to, do some work on the tube. So that was before I was born. And I had 2 older brothers. And so my mom figured she's never going to have any more kids. But then, because he showed up there, and by the way, my dad told me the story, and by the way, my uncle told me the same story. So I heard it from both of them, including my mother, by the way. So they moved to California, and then lo and behold, she got pregnant with me. And she never thought she'd get pregnant again, ever.
Right.
And she got pregnant again with my sister and also my younger brother, too, eventually. So, but all that wouldn't have happened if my uncle hadn't walked by right at that moment and says, well, hold on a minute. I think there's another way to do this. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. That is such a miracle. I mean, that was so divine.
Yeah, so that's what we are in a divine world. Do we understand it? Do I understand it? No. But I know that miracles happen every day, really. They really, really do. Some of them are very, very obvious, and a lot of times they're not. One of my theories, by the way, is that we all have had our lives saved by what, as you call it, angelic presences or whatever. But most of the time, we don't know about it. I'd say 9 out of 10 times, or even 99 out of 100 times, your life has been saved. You aren't aware of it. You're just kind of going
Exactly.
along in your life, and you just happen to turn this way instead of that way, and your life was saved.
Right.
And you don't know that even happened. And then every
I
now and
know.
then we'll have a situation where you realize that had things been a half of a second different, you would have died.
Right.
And I've had those stories, and so have you probably. Most people have had a few of those also. Oh, there's my friend. There's Tim Gillette, who was down at remember Tim?
Oh, Tim. Hi, Tim.
Yeah, Tim, I'm interviewing Karen. By the way, I have to tell you something funny, Karen. You and what was the woman sitting next to you? What was her name with blonde hair?
Barbie.
Barbie? My friends, I got to tell you something. We were at this mastermind group. Karen and Barbie, they were the secondary entertainment for this show. I honestly, you can tell me, Tim, if you agree, but I was having so much fun, and especially Barbie. I mean, she just never stopped laughing. I was talking to my son, and I thought, it's like, I'll make you laugh for a second. Did you ever see that movie When Harry Met Sally?
I haven't seen that
Oh,
one.
you never have? Oh, okay. Well,
No.
it's not going to really work for you. But anyway, what I was about to say is not going to work. But the bottom line is, whatever it was, she was so happy. I was saying to my son, whatever she's eating, that's what I want too. Because she was just
See, that's
laughing from the bottom of her heart. I've never heard somebody laugh so much, so long. Is that true, Tim? Yeah, yeah. He just said both you and Barbie were funny. Or not funny, you were awesome. And it really, and then I think, you know what, it was fun? Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes. Tim knows what I'm talking about. Because you've
yeah.
seen, Tim, you've seen When Harry Met Sally, right? I'm guessing. Um, you know, basically, I'll tell you this much. She's having an argument with this guy who wants to be married to her. Well, but at that point, they didn't know they were going to be married to each other. And she's sort of this conservative, prudish woman, and he's not. He's the opposite. He goes, he's talking about what a great lover he is, and she's going, well, you just think that. She goes, we women can fake it. He goes, no, I could tell the difference. For those of you who've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So she goes, oh yeah, you really think so? He goes, yeah, I think so. I could tell the difference. Yeah, see, this is what Tim Gillette's saying. So then suddenly she starts having a fake orgasm. You've got to see this movie now because she's there they're in a restaurant and she gets louder. I don't even know how you could do this even as an actor. To me, it'd be embarrassing. But she gets louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. Yeah, and here's what Tim Gillette says. And this old lady looks over and says to the waitress, "I'll have what she's having."
You know what's so funny is I worked at a dialysis unit, and the patients would always say, "I don't know what she drank for lunch, but I want to have what she's having."
They say that about
Because
you sometimes.
oh, they say that about me all the time. I mean, I they call me Dudley Moore because I'm just like I just always have happy thoughts. It just tickles me, and I just start laughing, and nobody's talking to
Well, you
me.
know what? If you can keep that attitude, honestly, really honestly, I truly, the two of you, that whole weekend was a lot of laughing, and I loved all that laughing. Not just you two, but and Bruce and Bruce, Craig was
Yeah.
saying a lot of funny things. Some intended to be funny and some not. But the bottom line is, we're all laughing constantly, and that was sometimes. You know what? For those of you listening out there, if you want to be healthy and be happy. Find something you can honestly laugh at, and just let go and laugh and be happy, and quit carrying the burdens of the world on your shoulders so much. And
That
I,
reminds me of I did a whole podcast on this about the science of laughter and how it really does support the scripture that says that a merry heart doeth good like medicine. And laughter really is the best medicine. So I think it's very powerful, not only for our emotional health, but our physical health as well. Laughter reduces cortisol, it strengthens our immune system. There's so many benefits to laughter in our life.
you know, I 100% agree with you, and I probably should do it more. I'm an attorney, and a lot of times I mean, actually, I will tell you this: when I'm talking to adjusters, I'd like to sort of have fun with them. That's my latest. I'm doing it even more than I've ever done it before. I figure I don't know how long I'll keep doing this, but whenever I talk to these adjusters, I try to get to know a little bit about their lives and tease them a little bit, things like that. And it turns out to be a fun experience for them and for me too. And a lot of times they'll say, "Gosh, we sure wish we love calling your office." Which how many times does that happen, right? But
Right.
it's just because I'm having fun, really. It's I'll even tell them. I said, "You got to please forgive me," but I don't even say forgive me usually. I said, "I've been doing this for 48 years. I got to do something to enjoy myself," and that's really my truth. I mean, if I'm going to get on the phone with people, I'm going to get to know them a little bit. You know, I'm going to find out. A lot of times I'll talk to adjusters and their kids are having a soccer tournament or this or that, and then you get to know them. And then if I talk to them 6 months from now or a year, I can ask them how the soccer tournament go, things like that, and it just turns
Right.
into be a much happier experience. But you've got to laugh, and if you so that gift, whatever it was, so maybe you were feeding that back and forth between you and Barbie. I don't know what the dynamic was, but it was one of the most fun experiences I've had, and honestly, Craig seemed to have a really good time too. So. I think everybody did. It's funny for those of you listening. We belong to a mastermind group. You know what? I think I'm going to invite Craig to come on this show before long. It's a mastermind group that gets together every few months, one way or another, and it's just a chance to be around people in a different setting, right? It kind of feeds your mind a little bit. And just sitting there laughing and kind of goofing around. My son had been to one 9 years ago, believe it or not. He came with me this time too. And he says, this group now seems more like just a group of friends getting together, which is nice. I mean, that's actually what you
Right.
really want, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a relaxed group of friends supporting one another. And, and so it was really a lot of fun. Yeah, if any of you ever are interested, want to know something about the group, I'll let you know about it. It's over in California. We meet normally, but it just was
And,
a little.
and I have a comedy podcast with Barbie. And so
Oh, you do?
we always have so much fun. And I when I met Craig, I'm like, oh my gosh, you are just my kind of person. And so we had Craig as a guest and just couldn't stop laughing. The time just flew by, and it was really fun. He's just such a good person, just such a good heart.
Yes, he's very much a family person, which is partly why I joined this group about 11 or 12 years ago, because that's really the same way I am too.
Right.
So you have a podcast. Tell people how do you find that podcast? That sounds like fun.
Yeah, so our podcast is every Monday morning at 9 a.m. on LinkedIn. And I have three podcasts. I have another one called The Hero Within, and that is about people that have navigated adversity and how they have found hope and healing. And then I have another one where we talk about emotional intelligence in leadership. So yeah, I have several podcasts that I do.
Sounds interesting.
I feel like
I'll have to.
we need all of those tools
You
to
know
help
what
us.
you should do at the end of the show? This was time is. I'm sure this happens when you do podcasts too. Time just disappears, like it evaporates, right? Like
I know.
we're already to our third break, believe it or not, right now. I know that's what I mean. It's like what third break? How that's possible? But anyway, stay on with me, my friends on Facebook. Stay tuned. We'll keep talking, Karen and I. And then in a second, we'll have Ernie and probably Janet will be there too. So stay tuned. This is Robert Sidell. It's the Gateway Show. We'll be back in just a moment. So yeah, during this little gap, they're hearing commercials over the radio, but people on Facebook are not hearing that. And then, like I said, we'll have this recording will be put onto YouTube also, and I'll send you a copy of it.
Awesome.
So, um, yeah, that's fun. So you just made me think that who knows? Maybe I should. Well, I did have two different podcasts for a long time. I used to have a law podcast where they didn't call them podcasts back. They just a law radio show,
Yeah.
and I did that for about 15 years. But somewhere about 7 or 8 years ago, I decided I don't really want to answer legal questions over the phone anymore. I mean, over the air for a bunch of different reasons. And
Yeah.
so that now I just do more of a spiritual, optimistic show. So, and
And
just have
I
fun,
love
really.
what, yes, and I love what you're doing because we need more optimism. We need more spirituality. And I'm so grateful that you are bringing this medium, in such a widespread way with the radio, with social media. It's wonderful what you're doing.
It's
I should
fun.
probably say when you're rolling on live.
It's really a lot of fun, and you never know when you're speaking to somebody's needs. And I I remember one year it was Super Bowl Sunday, and I thought nobody's gonna be listening to the show, so I was even having more fun than usual. And then later
Yeah.
on, as the show went on, I got an email from a lady that says, "You don't know this, but I was about to commit suicide," and she goes, "I started listening to your show," and I thought, "Nope, I'm supposed to be alive." And she actually followed up with me several times over the years, and she was a law student at the time, and she was able to succeed. And so I didn't. I thought nobody would be listening, and somebody important was listening for their life anyway. So you never know.
Right. You never
You
know.
plant seeds. I think that's all we can do. That's my
Yeah.
honest opinion. Plant seeds. That's why I can't. I can't hold a burden about any of this stuff, but I have a lot of dreams, a lot of things I'm working on, which is fun. And looking at you, by the way, looking at your face, you look quite happy actually, which is nice. I'm just
I
seeing that
am
in.
happy. By the grace of God, I am happy because even though I have a lot of trials that I deal with, because of him, I have hope, and hope brings me so much happiness.
I did an interview with a lady about 4 weeks ago, who is Mrs. United States, and it was a lot of fun interviewing her. Very woman of great faith, but her son was in a very bad accident a few years ago and was actually paralyzed from the neck down. Yet somehow with her faith, she's able to come through that. So that show is on actually on. If you ever go to YouTube, it's about 4 weeks ago. But so she was probably one of the most I can't even explain what she was like, but it was very, very inspiring to hear her talk about the depth of her faith. Okay, we're coming back in the radio show. Good evening, my friends. This is Robert Sidell. This is the Gateway Show. Always a pleasure to be with you on Sunday nights. I'm looking out over a beautiful desert evening. We live, you know what? There's beauty everywhere. I was at the ocean, and now I just got home, and I'm looking here in the beauty here. And and this show is on 6 to 7 p.m. live every Sunday evening. Tonight I'm interviewing Karen Hall, and it's fun talking to her. I didn't know she did 3 different podcasts, including a comedy one. That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, oh, there's Ernie. Can you see Ernie on the screen? That
Hey, Ernie.
Hello. Hi,
There's,
Karen.
that's Reverend
Hi,
Ernie.
Robert.
He's the one I was mentioning that he and I met at a networking group about, I don't know, we don't like to talk about it, do we, Ernie? But I think it was about 11 years ago now or something. We want to pretend it was a week or so ago.
Yes.
But Ernie is an interesting person because he was born in India, but a church sponsored his father and you to come over to this country, right, Ernie? Something along those lines?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, and Jimmy Owens, and if Jimmy Owens, by the way, is saying hi also, Karen, from our
Oh,
mastermind.
oh, hi, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have him on here. I had him on him before. Here's a guy with a heart transplant. I don't. How do you? I mean, that's a true act of faith, right? And
Yes.
I had a great time interviewing. Oh, there's Janet, my friend Janet. She's the one that took care of my dad the last few years of his life. Um,
Oh, bless you, Janet.
Yes, thank you. It
and
is a
Janet
blessing.
and Janet's kind of like you. I think she likes to laugh a lot. Actually, we just laugh at Janet. Really, no, I'm just teasing Janet. But no, but Janet is. I know. I could say things like that to her. She isn't bothered.
You can.
You're right. I've known you so long now. That's for sure. I think we are in that category where we can tease each other a little bit, right? We
That's true.
we give each other that permission. And Ernie is an amazing person. He still gets up at 4:30 every morning, Ernie, something like
Yep.
that.
4:15 and 4 between 4:15 4:30. Yes.
And he goes down and
Wow.
teaches students at school. And he's
Right.
like, I don't. Well, if you want to tell him your age, you can, Ernie. I don't need to disclose your age. Or if you want to tell him your age, you can. Do you want to tell her your age?
Well, I'm 79 and going on to 80 in 4 months.
Oh my goodness. And still getting up so early. That's so impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, and dealing with high school kids
And serving. Yes.
and serving.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
Guest teacher at a high school. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing, Ernie. It really, really is. Well, before I don't want to lose track of time here. Why don't you share with us your prayer, Ernie?
All right. Oh, thank you, Robert. The topic of the prayer is, do you believe in God's role for your life? Okay. Dear Lord, we give gratitude and thanks for giving us this miraculous life and guiding us to walk in life. We pray that we open our hearts to believe in the infinite love and power of our Creator. We have complete belief in God to walk with us and protecting us in our journey. Guide us to be in awareness, to acknowledge our existence and way of life by trusting great divine spirit, and which in turn inspires our daily life to experience love, joy, happiness, compassion, and prosperity. We pray for each one of us to have belief in our Creator that everyone in this world will experiencing creating heaven on earth. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful
Amen.
prayer, Ernie. And he always does these kind of prayers and likes to end it in heaven on earth. And it's a nice thing. He's actually written a whole book of prayers. Tell him the name of your book. Tell him the name of your book, Ernie.
Oh, my book name is How to Create Your Own Heaven on Earth.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nicely done. And it's really a collection of their prayers. There it is, right there.
There
Right.
it is.
So, Reverend Janet, what do you want to share with us tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to read from Daily Word because it pretty much covers, it's not for today, but it's what you've been talking about. And it is divine guidance brings me to a fuller experience of myself. During my life, I have followed paths that felt lonely or seemed unlikely. Yet I followed them because the call was so strong it could not be ignored or denied. This power is how I know I am being divinely guided. The call of my heart may surprise me, but I trust that God within is moving me towards growth and ever expanding manifestations of goodness. Jesus followed his inner guidance as Holy Week progressed. Although he might have preferred a safer course for himself, he followed his divine calling. When my guidance speaks to me, I listen. I follow it with faith and trust. My guidance is God within me, calling me to reach higher, go further, and live my divine purpose. And from Psalms, you are indeed my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me.
That's very beautiful. You know, both of you share a nice vision of love and light. And by the way, Janet performs weddings every day, right? Did you perform any today?
I did today. Yeah, at Paris.
At
In the
Paris?
cabaret room. It was the first time I did it in there. It was fun.
So Janet's been doing that for quite a long time. That's how she basically the way she has a living right now. Our friend Ellen Birnbaum just says hi. Um, you know, I don't even know if I've been in their cabaret room. I'm trying to remember what that's like. So, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's closed this time of day, but the people wanted to get married there, so they had a piano player. It was lovely, actually. Yeah.
It sounds like fun. Sounds like fun. You've done them all over, right? I think you've done weddings in almost every kind of story, really.
Yep, I have. Because I've been doing it for 28 years.
Really, that long?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Huh. Well,
Time flies.
I know. And time flies. And we're going to probably run out of time in a second. By the way, Karen, give us your website one more time. Oh, and go back to Facebook too. And put a comment in with addresses to some of the things you do, okay?
Sure, you bet. So my website is KarenHallCoaching.com.
KarenHallCoaching.com. That's pretty easy to remember. Okay, and I did put that in, by the way. I put that in the announcement I put on Facebook, so people can find it there also. Well, you know what, Karen? I'm so glad you shared your story with us. I don't know if both of you heard, when she was born, she was 1 pound, 13 ounces, or 11 ounces, or something like that. And they told her parents that she would be retarded and whatever. What else they say? Blind and retarded or something?
Yeah, well, they said I wouldn't even live, and then they said I'd be a vegetable. But I'm not.
And you had to go and prove them wrong.
By the grace of God, I'm not. It is just absolutely miraculous, and I am so grateful. I was just talking, Ernie and Janet, about how my theme for my life has been to trust in God with all my heart and lean not unto my own understanding. And when you were talking about divine guidance and being in tune, and Ernie about making it heaven here on earth, the only way that I've been able to do that is to trust in God, because he is my rock and he is my hope. And I do look for those miracles from him every day, just like Robert talks about.
Hold on, the radio show is going to be over. If you two want to stay on a minute or two longer, we can still stay on Facebook for a minute or two. This is Robert Sidell, my friends, on bidding you another beautiful week on the Gateway Show. We'll be back on live next Sunday night at 6 p.m. I wish God's blessings upon you. Remember, God is real, miracles are real. For that reason, the best is yet to come. So stay tuned, my friends. And if anybody wants to stay on Facebook, we'll stay here just a few more minutes before we wrap things up. So this is Robert Sidell wishing you all the best. God bless. May miracles be with you.
Let's stay on.
You can stay on for a minute, both of you, if you want. Okay, yeah, there we go. So, and you can kind of cut me off from that if you want right now. So, in any event, for each of you, I know what to do. Hold on a second. Hold on. I know what to do. Okay, can you still hear me? Okay, good. Because I was hearing the radio in the background, so I cut that off. So, all right, well, you know what? And so Karen is an interesting person. I don't know if you heard me talking about it, but at the seminar I went to, she and this lady were laughing so hard that the whole room was laughing. It's like when you have people laughing like that. Even they brought in this well-known speaker that works with Tony Robbins, And he, every time he was talking, and he goes, you two would start laughing. And he goes, I'm going to have to change around what I'm doing because of this, or something like that. Didn't he say something like that?
Yeah, he sure did. Yeah,
But
I know.
Barbie, right?
Yeah,
Barbie.
I mean,
Barbie.
yeah, I was just telling Robert, people say that I'm like Dudley Moore, but like my husband will say, "Are you talking on the phone in the other room?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm just having thoughts in my head about things, and I just get amused easily, and I just love to laugh. It just makes me happy to laugh."
you know what? I'm always trying to learn my whole life, and well, I think I'm going. I like to laugh too. I really do. But like I said, in my legal stuff, a lot of times it seems like I'm involved in serious stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I have to, but I still want to try to integrate more laughter in what I'm doing. I just do because I do know it is good for the heart.
It
Read
is
that. Tell us that proverb again or whatever it was because I really like it.
that a merry heart doeth good like medicine. And so I remember when I had read that scripture when I was younger and I pondered that. Well, then I went into the medical field. And so as I was studying about medicine and about laughter and the effect on the immune system, I learned about Norman Cousins, and he had a terminal disease, and they could offer him nothing. And so he started watching comedy shows. He watched Laurel and Hardy and all these different comedy shows, and he was able to overcome his disease. And he found, I think he was a doctor, he found the connection between laughter and the immune system, and he was one of the early researchers about that. Well, that fascinated me. I was like, oh wow, because in my earlier years I was a worrier and I didn't laugh as much. And so to overcome that by trusting in God, even though I prayed to him all the time, I still had fears, and he had to reassure me. But then when he helped me to see things differently and to be able to even laugh in the face of some pretty difficult things, and I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? And even like if my husband and I are having an argument, sometimes I'll say to him, did you want to have the 5-minute argument or the 3-minute argument? And sometimes laughter just diffuses things, and it just helps to help everything be lighter and not quite so, take ourselves so serious. And the other thing that's so interesting to me is how laughter is bonding. When you and I laugh together, we feel connected with each other. And so for me, connection is like air. So I just love laughter.
Um, yeah, no. I'm so with you on that. I really, really am. As a matter of fact, I'm writing a book on marriage right now. Matter of fact, I'm almost
Oh,
finished with it. But I know I do talk about it's important to laugh, but I think maybe I want to emphasize that chapter a little bit more.
yeah.
You have to laugh. I mean, there's so many um, bizarre things that happen in the world.
I know.
Some things are hard. I mean, if people are grieving a loss, and I with some of my clients are grieving tough losses
Right.
sometimes, and then my role is prayer. Believe it or not, I pray with my clients a lot, which is a little bit unusual, but it's made my life a lot happier and it's helped my clients too. But
Well, and thank you for bringing that up, because I'm, empathy is extremely important to me. And so I don't laugh all the time, because, sometimes it's not appropriate. And I do want to, like when the scriptures talk about, bearing one another's burdens, I don't want to laugh at those moments. I want to be with someone when they're in pain. And so it's not like I'm always laughing.
right, yes, I did a motivational seminar goes back now about 40 years ago, but one of the things he said was the teaching was be appropriate to your audience,
Right.
and that is true. There's a place for everything. I mean, you can't be perfect that way. I mean, you're not going to always appeal to everybody you're speaking to, but I mean, at least be a little bit appropriate. If somebody just tells you somebody died in their family, you're probably not going to laugh about it. But um, yeah. Well, you know what? It's really been Karen. It's just fun because I've got to know you a lot better just over this little interlude here. And Jaron and Ernie, I'm so glad you both were able to be a part of it also. And yeah, you know what? And I will be putting this on YouTube, and then I'll send you. I'll send you each copies of it, so you have a record of it yourselves. If you ever want to listen to it again.
You. Thank you
So
so much. Thank you for inviting me, and nice to meet you, Ernie and Janet, and nice to visit with you, Robert. And I'd love to visit with you again. It was really fun.
let's keep expecting miracles.